Hey YouTube, Qiuyuan is finally here and ready to breathe cinema. Our newest 5-star era resonator is soft-spoken but deadly with light but viciously fast attacks. My name is Xlice, and in this video I'll be covering everything you need to know about Qiuyuan and showcasing his power at S0. Contrary to most WuWa characters, Qiuyuan is a bit lighter on the text description, so for both you and me, this one's going to be a lot easier to digest. But as usual, we don't need any of the text descriptions. We're going straight to the battlefield with intuitive explanations so you can build and play him right away. This is going to be done on the WuWa Media Server, and of course, that means things are subject to change for full release. Let's dive right into the Bamboo King. First, an intro clip. So this is a normal rotation with SK, Qiuyuan, Galbrena, and Trial, with slight pauses between actions so you can see his action sequence. First, we're going to set up with Shorekeeper, and then Qiuyuan's rotation to set up for Galbrena. So, intro,
what sleeps within bamboo.
Then Echo,
Behold this boy.
then basic until full Forte bar, and then enhanced heavy attack to consume the Forte bar. Liberation, and then outro into Galbrena's rotation. His primary role here will be a sub DPS at S0, and in this case supports Galbrena. This kit is pretty simple and efficient to execute with the usual generate plus consume Forte bar gameplay design. So now let's break things down step by step. So, Qiuyuan is considered a sub DPS with a universal buff on Liberation, so our main goal is to generate the energy to activate Liberation before outroing out. His kit aims to first generate his Forte bar, consume it with his heavy attacks, and ideally, right after, be able to activate Liberation into full Concerto energy for an easy outro skill. There's no need for extensive mechanical gameplay for his kit. His rotation is probably one of the easiest to execute, and also pretty quick, leading to really fast setup time, ideal for a sub DPS. And since WuWa typically operates on a rotational DPS lineup, he's not entirely restricted to being a quote sub DPS. He can totally be the main DPS of your team with his own sub DPS if you'd like. But since his design is intended to be a sub DPS for echo skill damage dealers, namely Galbrena, we'll be focusing on his supportive role. So let's take a look at that Forte bar. It's got a very common 3-part design. As you guys saw in the intro clip, his Forte bar design is the usual generate and consume archetype. Normal rotation with intro is pretty quick. Intro is going to provide 2 full bars of his Forte, after which his basic attacks fill the rest. Without intro skill, the first bar is generated from the final attack in his basic attack chain, basic attack 3, and dodge counters if possible. That first bar will take the most time to generate naturally, and usually this is skipped with his intro skill in a proper team rotation. His Forte bar is called Sword Stir Soliloquy, but it is a little bit difficult to pronounce, so yeah, you can just call it like SS or something. Anyways, once his first bar is generated, his basic attack transforms and has a different icon, which is now added to your bottom right tooltip. These new basic attacks generate his Forte bar much faster, at half a bar per attack. Now, once it's full, he'll enter a special ink splash of the mind state for 8 seconds. During this time, he'll have access to enhanced heavy attacks that consume his Forte bar. All you need to do is hold left click and all 3 attacks will be chained together. These 3 attacks are individually considered echo skill casts, so if you have Galbrena on your team, you'll notice her tooltip bar rise up substantially. Now, once his Forte bar is depleted, you'll ideally have his Liberation ready. This is your team-wide crit damage buffing ability and is the most important thing to activate before his rotation finishes. First, we get a beautiful cinematic Liberation animation, dealing a nice chunk of damage, but importantly, we gain up to 30% crit damage for 30 seconds. He does this by converting any crit rate over 50% to crit damage at a 1:2 ratio. This just means that he needs 65% crit rate minimum to receive all those buffs. Anything over is nice for his own crits, but for your build needs, 65% crit rate is a must. Now, it is possible for supports like Shorekeeper to benefit this, reducing his build needs to 52.5%, but getting 65% crit rate for him just requires a little investment, and you'll never have to think about his build again. Post-Liberation, his Concerto energy should be full, so simply outro out for a juicy 50% echo skill damage amp to the next resonator. At the current time making this guide, the next resonator will most commonly be Galbrena. So that's basically the gist of how he works. Funnily enough, I did not mention his resonance skill at all, and that's because it isn't a core part of his Forte generation, so it's not technically needed. But if you're curious, it's actually pretty useful. His base resonance skill is basically like a parry, able to block an instant bursts of damage while also stagnating enemies. Useful during setup if you happen to intro in and know the enemy is mid-animation for an attack. Hold skill is a cinema ambush attack and can also be used for overworld reversal. Unfortunately, it does consume stamina and it doesn't go that far out, so its practical use is limited. Now let's run through his typical rotation. With intro skill, things are very straightforward. Upon entry, intro skill will grant 2 full Forte bars out of 3, and then you basic attack until the full bar. Then you're going to hold left click to channel 3 sequential enhanced heavy attacks to consume his entire Forte bar. Then you're going to liberation, and then outro skill and his rotation is complete. Now, if you don't have enough energy for liberation here, use his resonance skill if available and some basics to get there. Your experience and stats will vary for liberation uptime. Without intro skill, we simply extend the beginning rotation. Basic chain plus dodge counter from 0 to full Forte, basically spamming left click, not much else to do here. Then we consume Forte bar as usual and liberation at the end. Now, whether you are a sub DPS or main DPS Qiuyuan, your rotation should be staying the same since it's pretty static and unchanging. The only difference will be his damage output, which will correspond to his teammates. As an example, if you run Shorekeeper into into Qiuyuan, you will be maximizing Qiuyuan's heavy attack damage. Whereas if you run Shorekeeper into Qiuyuan into Galbrena, you will be maximizing Galbrena's echo skill damage. Alright, so now you should know how to play him. Let's go through what buffs he gets and Forte priority. Of course, we've got the team buffs. Liberation is 30% crit damage to all resonators for 30 seconds. As Forte bar, when you get 400 points, which is 2 bars out of 3, this will grant 30% echo skill damage to all resonators for 30 seconds. Both of these buffs will be generated during a normal rotation, so nothing specific that you will have to do. Then we have middle Forte node. This provides a little bit of quality of life for himself. At max Forte bar when he enters Ink Splash state, his enhanced heavy attack gains 50% damage bonus and the final hit restores 30 concerto energy. This is quite nice for both the DPS increase, but more importantly to help generate that concerto energy for your outro skill. Top Forte node. When casting Echo skill, he gains a buff that is consumed when he generates any part of his Forte bar. For his rotation, this just means we want to use his Q right away after intro skill to gain 10% attack. Now, it's not the end of the world if his Q is used later, but if you're min-maxing damage, it's optimal for that extra 10% attack. Rest of his Forte stats are going to give him crit rate and attack percent. For Forte priority, we go Forte Circuit, number 1, then Liberation, and then Intro, Resonance Skill, and Basic Attack are all less valuable. This is going to be an order of total multiplier value that you'll get per rotation. Forte Circuit contains nearly 90% of his rotation's attacks, including basic attacks. His basic attacks transform when he reaches just 1 bar of his Forte, after which they scale off the Forte Circuit talent. In a team rotation leading with intro skill, the basic attack talent is never actually used. So Forte Circuit and Liberation are basically 95% of his damage. The rest can be leveled at your disposal. Alright, so before we jump into his build details, let's talk about his sequence nodes. Like usual, the first 2 sequence nodes are on the table even for F2Ps, assuming you have the currency. S1, immunity to interruption during his entire enhanced heavy attack chain, which is when he's consuming his full Forte bar doing 3 attacks. Also, a 20% crit rate increase. This is a pretty standard S1, providing interruption immunity, and 20% crit rate allows him to reach a favorable crit threshold of 85% plus, but also easier for him to just reach 65% for his liberation buff to all teammates. S2, Bamboo's Shade now grants an extra 30% echo skill damage amp, doubling the original for 60% total amp. As a reminder, this buff auto activates when he has 2 out of the 3 bars of his Forte. Now S3. So this is where we start seeing a proper transition to main DPS Qiuyuan. Liberation gains a 6x final damage increase. All 3 heavy attack chains gain a 7x final damage increase, and his outro skill deals an extra 500% attack multiplier. On top of these major final damage increases, once per rotation at max concerto energy and an empty Forte bar, he'll gain an enhanced resonance skill usage called Straw Cape in Drizzly Rain. This will deal 500% attack multiplier, consume 60 concerto energy, and restore 2 out of the 3 of the Forte bar. To compensate for that concerto energy consumption, now his enhanced heavy attack will generate 30 concerto energy on each hit. Now in total, these changes massively increase his damage across the board and also make his rotation longer to fit that of a main DPS. From an initial glance, the rotation seems to extend past his first enhanced heavy attack chain usage, adding an enhanced resonance skill usage plus a second heavy attack chain usage before using Liberation. You guys will be able to see on screen the original rotation and now the new one with S3. As usual, I'll be diving deeper into these changes on a S0 to S6 video on my second YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe over there to get notified when it releases. Then we have S4 for a standard 20% attack increase, and we have S5 for 15% ignore defense. And then S6. So his third final enhanced heavy attack now stagnates targets for 5 seconds or until they are damaged again. He also deals 600% attack multiplier AoE when his Forte bar is used up after his enhanced heavy attacks. This should be occurring twice during a typical rotation, which is his new S3 rotation. And finally, enhanced resonance skill, using it now also grants 100% crit damage for 6 seconds. So these final changes in S6 are basically just rounding out his DPS capabilities while providing a bit extra stat buffs in crit damage. Overall, Qiuyuan's sequence nodes are a bit more unique than most. S1 and S2 are very standard quality of life increases for him, mainly as a sub DPS. S3 is by far his largest gain, providing massive multiplier increases to all major parts of his kit, while also extending his rotation to be a proper main DPS. S4 and S5 provide fairly bland DPS increases for him, and S6, strangely enough, just provides minor additions to his rotation and 100% crit damage. All the substantial gains that you'd expect from him are definitely from S3. If you want a proper main DPS Qiuyuan, then S3 is your target investment. Now let's talk about his weapons. So he's a sword user, attack scaling, and benefits from crit rate, crit damage, and a heavy attack damage. His signature, Emerald Sentence, is very tailored to him, granting both selfish and team-wide benefits. You get 12% selfish attack, 30% heavy attack damage bonus, which stacks twice for 60% total stat, and then team-wide, when you cast intro skill, he grants 20% echo skill damage to all resonators. So total stat, including the team-wide buffs, he gains 92% for himself from the attack, heavy attack damage, and echo skill damage, and then 20% for all resonators. Other options. Since we actually have quite a bit of 5-star sword users, his sword selection is pretty broad, but most of the passes will be pretty useless. His signature weapon will be the only one that specifically grants a heavy attack damage bonus. So prioritize it if you want the usual 20% DPS gain over other weapons. Otherwise, we have the following. We have Camelia's Sword. This is a crit rate secondary stat, attack percent passive, and the basic attack damage bonus is going to be useless. Total stat, just 12% from the attack. We have Chongli's Sword. So this is crit damage secondary, 12% attack, and the resonance skill damage is also useless. So total stat, just 12%. And then we have Emerald of Genesis. This is our standard weapon, crit rate secondary, 12.8% energy regen, and 6 to 12% attack. Total stat is 24.8%, including the energy regen. And then for 4-star weapons that are worth using, we have both of the Battle Pass swords. We have Feather Edge, which has crit rate secondary with a conditional passive for attack percent. Qiuyuan usually ults at the end of his rotation, so this passive is not that useful. And then we also have Lumen Gloss, which is attack secondary with conditional heavy attack damage bonus. While both of these are usable, they are strictly worse than the standard sword. Overall, Qiuyuan's weapon choices look better than most characters, but he really only has 2 choices I'd consider using. If you can, grab his signature for tailored buffs to him, otherwise standard sword is pretty good. Other 5-star options are essentially just slightly weaker stat sticks. Alright, now let's cover his echoes. So he's got a new 3-piece set to rock, Law of Harmony. This one's very specific to him, providing 30% heavy attack damage bonus to the wearer, and also a 4% echo skill damage bonus to all resonators that stacks up to 4 times. This procs anytime you wearer casts an echo skill, whether from the actual echo or any skills that count the same way. Qiuyuan has 3 additional echo skill casts from his enhanced heavy attack chain, so this is exact synergy for max stacks combined with this Q. We'll be combining this 3-piece set with the standard 2-piece arrow damage set. And then as a stepping stone, while you are farming 3-piece harmony, we have 5-piece Sierra Gale will be the default choice. This grants 40% total arrow damage bonus. Avoid Gust of Vulcan or Windward Pilgrimage for the 5-piece, since he doesn't apply or scale with arrow erosion. They're fine for the 2-piece though. And then of course, make sure to upgrade this 3-piece when you can, since the essentially a 46% total stacking benefits both him and your allies. For the main echo, we're going for a cost Fenrico. This will grant 12% arrow damage bonus and 12% heavy attack damage bonus, which is 24 total stat for him. and it's also a summon, not a transform, so it's very easy to activate without interrupting your rotation. His optimal build is going to be 4-3-3, but 4-4 is a viable alternative. With his Forte giving crit rate and weapon also giving crit rate, his base crit rate is decently balanced, so you can invest in the 4-cost main stat however you want. Just make sure to maintain at minimum 65% crit rate for full liberation buffs to your entire team. My current build with fixed echo stats and 4-cost main stat is 68.8% crit rate. If you do invest in S1, this will become 88.8% crit rate in combat, and with Shorekeeper, it'll be 100% in combat. For the 3-cost echoes, either arrow damage or attack percent will work fine, but arrow damage will be best in slot. Aim for a good balance of crit rate, crit damage, and energy regen first, then attack and heavy attack damage bonus. As a sub DPS, his energy regen needs are higher than usual, and I would aim to have at least 120%. Ideally, you have 5 substats on all pieces to never worry about liberation uptime. 2 to 3 substats is fine to start to reach 120 to 130%. And then I'd say for S0 owners, the most important stat is going to be 65% crit rate first, then ER above 120, and then any offensive stat, which includes crit damage, attack percent, or heavy attack damage bonus. Alright, now onto a quick stat check. As a reminder, these are media server echoes with fixed crit rate, crit damage, attack, and ER. So this build will have a higher attack on average with the extra 10% on each piece. Crit rolls are all min rolls, so this is lowest bound assuming every piece is double crit. With these echoes, these are his stats. 2.4k attack, 68.8 crit rate, 257 crit damage, and 134 ER. On live servers, you can expect a lower attack of about 2.2k. For my personal recommendations for you to have, at least 65 crit rate, 225 plus crit damage depending on your weapon, and 120 plus ER. Your crit damage will vary depending on the weapon you use, so don't worry too much about hitting a certain threshold. Ideal builds on signature weapon will aim for a 100% crit rate in combat and around 250% crit damage with 120 to 145% ER. Team synergies. So at S0, his role is primarily a sub DPS for echo skill damage dealers, but he still can operate as a main DPS in certain teams. However, his damage output without sequence node investment is going to be lackluster. So if you really want him to be an invested main DPS, consider up to S3 investment. Seek back to the sequence node section for a breakdown of his sequence nodes. With this in mind, we have essentially 2 archetypes of teams for him. This is the standard echo skill damage team with Galbrena main DPS is going to look like follows. We have Shorekeeper, then Qiuyuan, and then Galbrena. This is a textbook team with Shorekeeper providing crit sustain, Qiuyuan providing echo skill damage buffs, and Galbrena being the main DPS. As of current, Galbrena is the only unit that has heavy echo skill damage scaling, so Qiuyuan's outro skill is specifically tailored for her. If you decide to run main DPS Qiuyuan, we have 2 major supportive designs for him. His damage type is heavy attack damage, so the best sub DPS we have for that is going to be Yuno. Paired with SK, this team comp is focused on raw heavy attack damage for Qiuyuan with significant sub DPS from Yuno herself. Now the second major supportive design is based on echo skill casts, not damage. In this case, we have units like Phrolova who have great synergy with lots of echo skill casts. Qiuyuan's default kit has access to 4 echo skill casts, 1 from his Q and 3 from his enhanced heavy attack, which all conveniently have slightly different names to count separately as individual echo skill casts. For those who need a refresh on Phrolova, her ultimate puts her in Maestro state where she can chill off field while Hecate attacks. During this ultimate, Hecate has up to 10 additional free enhanced attacks that activate when any Resonator casts Echo skill. Pairing Qiuyuan with Phrolova gives Phrolova 4 additional enhanced attacks during Maestro state while he's doing his rotation. If you have S3 plus Qiuyuan to elevate him to a main DPS, this Echo skill-based team comp will start to scale quite well. Pair these 2 with Cantarella and you have even more Echo skill cast focused team. Both Cantarella and Qiuyuan can each provide 4 Echo skill casts, meaning Phrolova will gain 8 extra enhanced attacks, with both of them rotating their skills. So to wrap things up, we've essentially got 3 team comp designs you can be comfortable to fit into. We have our standard echo skill damage sub DPS, which is going to be SK plus Qiuyuan plus Galbrena. Then we have Qiuyuan heavy attack main DPS, which is going to be SK plus Yuno plus Qiuyuan, in which S3 plus sequence node investment is preferred. And then of course we have the Phrolova oriented team comp, which is the echo skill cast comp. This is Cantarella plus Phrolova plus Qiuyuan. Each team's rotation order is placed according to the unit order. So it's usually usually going to be sustain into sub DPS into main DPS, or sustain setup into rotational DPS 1 into rotational DPS 2. Alright, now onto some showcases. I've got 2 full showcases for you guys, one as a sub DPS for Galbrena, and the other on Echo skill cast with Phrolova and Contarella. These showcases will be done against difficulty 6 hologram fallacy to give you a realistic perspective of how to approach and improvise your rotation against one-shottable enemy hits. I usually would use TOA for this, but the boss again is Hecate, and it's really difficult to get a proper run with how mobile that boss is. So first up, we've got standard Qiuyuan Galbrena. Since we can start off holograms with immediate liberation energy, we can rush the initial setup to get some nice damage off before the boss's first actions. So doing SK setup first, I do have to play it a little bit against the boss's attack patterns, so we do EQ liberation after that first dash, because Qiuyuan's heavy attack does get interrupted quite easily. So making sure we do a proper setup here, get that echo off. Forte bar is now ready, wait for this move, and then we go into full heavy attack. Now we can liberation and switch to Galbrena. Okay, so dash this attack, build up that Forte bar, make sure not to get hit, because these are all one-shottable moves. Proc most of our abilities, and then after this, we're going to go to town. EQ into liberation. Now, with a little bit of the stagnation here, I'm going to take advantage of it. Get these massive damage, as you guys can see. We're doing a massive amount of damage with Qiuyuan's buffs here. So I didn't manage to get intro off a Shorekeeper because our setup took a little bit too long, but that's okay. It's a very minor amount of damage. Alright, now we're resetting up for the second rotation. Based off of the HP bar, we only needed 2 full rotations. Also, notice how quickly a Galbrena's Afterflame tooltip is increasing. He is basically full once Qiuyuan goes. So, second rotation here. This is a little bit tricky. We want to do this as fast as possible. And there we go. Liberation, massive damage. Get these kicks off. And there it is. Almost died here. We had to kind of squeeze that damage out there. But yeah, as you guys can see, the clear is pretty strong here. The damage output, I think, is a massive increase over the previous comps that we had. We originally had Mortefi into Galbrena, but now Qiuyuan provides so much, right? He provides Echo Skill Damage Amp, he provides Echo Skill Damage bonus from his Forte bar, and he also provides crit damage bonus from his Liberation. So a lot of juicy buffs there. Next up, we've got S0 Phrolova and Qiuyuan. So this run is going to be quite different than normal runs, since there's no Shorekeeper setup. Instead, we have Contarella and Phrolova prepping for consistent damage with Hecate off-field. As usual, we can pre-set up Phrolova's Liberation beforehand by generating all her notes before the round starts. So we're starting off with Contarella here, getting her E into Liberation, and then going into her Forte bar as fast as possible. Alright, making sure after these moves to EQ, then swap over. We already have our no generation, so we just heavy attack into Liberation for Phrolova. Alright, so now it's Qiuyuan's responsibility. We're just living here, and you guys are going to watch that HP bar as all of these Hecate attacks go off. So look at that.
Mandate calls.
Just this rotation, Phrolova is doing an extra 4 enhanced attacks. Switching back to Contarella, we are about 45% HP in, and this is with S0 Qiuyuan. Alright, second rotation happening. The boss is down phase, and we can switch after this into Phrolova. Second generation here. Getting all the notes. Heavy attack. And then Liberation. And then back into Qiuyuan. So, boss has about 20% HP left. We're going to hope that the remainder of Hecate's attacks slay the beast. It's really close right here, but there it is. So, you guys can see the timer here. I believe it is going to be slightly faster. Alright, so 56-second clear. So obviously, both of these clears are pretty close together. I think that if you want to do this type of Echo skill damage comp, it's actually a lot stronger than may appear on paper. And of course, because there's no real DPS in this comp, we're doing it basically like double rotative DPS. Phrolova is an off-field DPS, and Qiuyuan is like technically a sub DPS here because he's not S3+. So if you do want to invest in Qiuyuan main DPS, it's going to slap a lot harder for this specific team comp. So that's going to wrap up this comprehensive guide on Qiuyuan. Is he worth to pull though? So in my opinion, if you are investing in Galbrena, he's definitely worth the grab. Otherwise, he's pretty flexible as a crit damage buffing sub DPS. That being said though, I think his strength does shine with echo skill cast type compositions, so synergies with Phrolova, Contarella, and possible future units will be his strongest selling point. Things to consider for his value: he's very hefty on echo skill buffs. He gives 30% echo skill damage to the entire team from Forte bar, he gives 50% echo skill amp from outro to the next resonator, and 30% crit damage from his liberation. These all multiply to provide about a 1.6 to 1.7x final damage increase to the receiving resonator. Currently, we have Shorekeeper, who is doing most of the sustain heavy lifting, but if you want someone purely for their buff value, then Qiuyuan is high value for that. And of course, we rarely get hot men released, so if that's your cup of tea, Qiuyuan's got some nice abs underneath those robes. So that's gonna wrap things up. If this video helped you out, I'd appreciate a like and sub to show YouTube that you enjoyed the video. And if you know someone who's interested in Qiuyuan, maybe this video would help them out. I stream every night on Twitch at twitch.tv/Xlice, so if you want to ask questions, hang out, or chill, I'm knee deep in a variety of gacha games. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about him. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.